In the previous episode, we have seen that there is documentary about En-ḥedu-ana. There are documents that she has really existed. In this episode, we will look at glimpses of history in a sacred song, glimpses of history of En-ḥedu-ana's life. There exists one source from which we can get these glimpses. This is a Sumerian song called by its first three words as Nin-me-shara. We will show in a minute how we can translate this beginning. This song we can only take into account for a history, for some glimpses into the history of En-ḥedu-ana, if it is actually something referring to her time, if it is authored by herself. This question is much disputed, and we will have a closer look at that dispute. But for the time being, it suffices to say that for the authorship of En-ḥedu-ana, we have new results, new research results, which we will present in this lecture series. The profile of the song. Its ancient title is Nin-me-shara, which can be translated as Lady of Countless Instruments of Power. Countless in Sumerian is the word šar. It is written by a circle, meaning, if we take it precisely, as 3,600, which is a round number in a culture with a sexagesimal system. So this word 3,600 can mean all, every. The instruments of power are more difficult to determine. What is meant by this strange term, instruments of power? We will come back to that. The lady of all instruments of power is the goddess Innana, the most powerful goddess of ancient Mesopotamia. For the precise meaning of instruments of power, I have to refer to one of the next episodes of Antike Kulturen Zgoll&Zgoll on YouTube. And to those of you who read books, to a book which is in an advanced state of preparation with the title Sacred Texts, Secret Rituals. This book is planned for 2022. The ancient title Nin-me-shara has the precise meaning Lady of all rituals. The material basis of this song, Lady of all rituals, is about 100 cuneiform tablets and fragments. So that means that this song has been famous in antiquity. The tablets date around 1800-1700 BC, the so-called Old Babylonian time, a time when many Sumerian texts have been copied. An example in some previous episodes has been the Keshim, where we have older tablets and fragments of about 800 years earlier. There is another highlight regarding this song, because it gives its own designation in the song. It is called Ser-kuk. This is Sumerian and means literally song of precious metal like silver or gold. So it is a song which has some kind of radiance. We can call it a brilliant song, and that means it is a sacred song, and as we will see later, in other episodes, it is a ritual song. I show you here some selection of the bibliography. Important is Hallow and Van Dijk's first edition of 1968, a pioneer work. And then with more material, more texts, the second edition of Zgoll 1997 with an historical and literary analysis, with analysis of the textual criticism, that means how the different texts write and how we can evaluate the writings, and with many new translations. And you see some more translations here and some points about the further analysis. The content of this song is about a high priestess, En-ḥedu-ana, named En-ḥedu-ana, who implores the goddess Innana to end a civil war. And we know of the historical references. There has been this priestess, En-ḥedu-ana, as we have seen, and there has been a civil war during her lifetime around the 23rd century BC. We find statements in this song that En-ḥedu-ana has been the creator of the song. And of course, this leads to interesting questions to ask. We have to ask, who is the earliest attested author? Is it En-ḥedu-ana? And we have to ask about the ancient attitude to authorship and literature. And besides all this, the point is, of course, to get insights into the song and its brilliance, its subtle rhetoric. En-ḥedu-ana calls herself daughter of Sargon, for example, in the alabaster disc inscription, which we have seen in a former episode. That is a reference to Sargon of Akkad, the ruler of a great empire in Mesopotamia, in a region traditionally full of independent city-states, the Sumerian city-states. Under him and under his grandson Naram-Sin, during whose time En-ḥedu-ana is still alive, there is a big upheaval. There are big upheavals of city-states against this empire. And the city of Ur, the city where En-ḥedu-ana is high priestess of the moon god, is one of the leading forces in this rebellion, which makes life quite difficult for En-ḥedu-ana. These are all, not all, but many of this is information taken from the song Ninmeshara with respect to En-ḥedu-ana. For the upheaval of city-states against Sargon and Naram-Sin, we have many other sources. The picture which emerges from the content of the song Lady of All Rituals, Ninmeshara, is that En-ḥedu-ana refuses to install a new ruler at Ur, at the city of Ur, a person with the name Lugal-ane. Lugal-ane and his people threat En-ḥedu-ana. They threat her to death. And she flees into exile. And there in exile, she creates a ritual to interact with Innana. She pleads Innana to stop this war by making herself seen as the most powerful goddess, by fighting against the troops of rebellious cities, which is of course meant against the city of Ur especially. So we have several levels of action. We have the level of action of human beings, Lugal-ane and others and their troops against Naram-Sin and his troops. We have the level of deities, where we find Innana as the protective goddess of Naram-Sin and his realm, against the god Nanna as city god of independent Ur. And it becomes very clear from the song that these two gods are against each other. They fight against each other. Not as the troops fight against each other, but in another level. They fight for the right to command who will be winning in this fight. And in between the gods and the human beings, there is this high priestess, En-ḥedu-ana, who mainly talks to the gods and makes only references to human beings in her song Ninme Shara. The next episode will be about En-ḥedu-ana and the myths in her sacred song Lady of All Rituals.